Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I will remind everybody that this meeting is being recorded and we are being uh, filmed live on the website. I'm starting the meeting because we have no outgoing chair or vice chair at this moment to undertake the chairing of the meeting. So I am proposing that we rejig the agenda slightly. We have a couple of attendees joining us. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, gentlemen. As I was explaining, we currently have no outgoing chair or vice chair to chair the meeting. So as the clerk, I am proposing that we rejig the agenda slightly in that we take the item regarding the annual election of the chair and vice chair as the very first item. That once the forum had voted and formally approved the new chair and vice chair, then the new chair can take over chairing the rest of the meeting, if that makes any sense. I can confirm that we have received 2 nominations. One is for Carl Smith as the chair and one is for Craig Charteris as the vice chair. I will put those to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? Any abstentions? Thank you. I can confirm that the chair and the vice chair for the next year is Carl Smith and Craig Charteris. Mr. Smith, if you'd like to come and take the chair seat.
Okay, so I just press that and then that's done. Very good. Okay, well, thank you very much then, Jane. So without further ado, we'll have a look at the agenda that we have for today. And the first item, of course, are the minutes from the previous meeting that took place on the 19th of June 2025. So just if people want to now have a look at those minutes and tell me if there are any items in there that are incorrect. So if we could just go through it quickly. So if you've got the minutes in front of you or you can see them on the first page, second page, tell me if there are any problems, third page, fourth page, fifth page, I'll keep going quickly, sixth page and seventh page. All good? Okay, well in that case then we can approve the minutes, Jane. Thank you very much. And then the next element are matters arising from there. I think that's the correct order, isn't it? It normally is. My printout is a little unclear there, so if you've got the right one, then I would appreciate that. Wonderful. Well, let's have a look at the summary of actions then. So let's just check that these things have happened. Secondary school representatives to speak to their governing bodies for a named substitute academies governor's representative, and that was for myself, Ben and Stuart. So Ben is with us today. Stuart? Next Thursday, okay. Likewise, well, not Thursday, but next week. So I've not been able to speak to them directly about that, unfortunately, but I certainly will be doing.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. And then our next item is future finance reports. This is for you, Andrew. Would include details of the payments made from the high needs funding and the funding paid for EHCP requests that had not been agreed.
Apologies. We're still working through exactly how to pick this up. It's not as simple as what it might sound, because there's certain aspects that would be available for all children. So it's how much do we include? So, for instance, if they've gone through the school support partnership, do you classify that as support and a cost against that or not? So we're just working up exactly how we're going to report that to yourselves. I don't want to bring data that isn't representative of what's actually happening.
I think my concern is, and I don't know if I'm the only school in this position, but we've got a meeting this afternoon with the SEN team, and I think I've got about 40 errors in our funding from SEN, 40. And a large chunk of them are EHC plans. And school finances, as everybody knows, are extraordinarily tight. I'm balancing my budget on an absolute razor-thin margin. And these should be in our current accounts. I was audited last week, and we're going to have errors in our accounts. Not because of us, but because the funding isn't correct from the local authority. I just don't think it's good enough. And it's been raised now on a number of occasions. And I'm happy to work with the local authority, but it shouldn't be the case that we're missing huge sums of money which make a difference between breaking even and having to go into deficit.
Andrew?
We are working with the service in terms of how we can improve it. So at the minute, the process largely sits outside of finance, and it is administered by the SEN team. We're looking at bringing that more into the finance environment, so that we will have more control over what's going out. We will obviously put in strengthen the controls going forward. At the minute, I'm out for recruitment for posts that will enable me to take that work over. I'm hoping to have that structure in place from January going forward. We are working with them, and I do have a member of my team that works very closely now with Jill's team in terms of trying to sort out. Obviously, there's lots of minutes to go back through in terms of unpicking where funding was agreed to make sure it ties up. So we're trying to get the checks and balances in place to ensure it goes forward.
I'm not saying this is a finance issue. This is a council issue where funding has been agreed, it's been put in writing, it's statutory, and then it's not being given to schools on time or even in the correct amount. And this has been going on now for at least from Christmas last year, probably beforehand. It shouldn't be the case. I'm having to put, a huge amount of internal resource to put together a document to spot not your errors, the council's errors. And it's not small sums of money. And at the end of it are very vulnerable children. This is not a you, Andrew. I hasten to add, this is a council issue, and the council should be resolving it. I'm getting to a point where I'll end up having to change our internal system. Instead of waiting for funding to come through from the council and us checking the spreadsheet, we'll invoice the council in advance. That's a ludicrous position. You've agreed it. Council has agreed the funding. It's not like we're making it up. But there's just, really basic errors. I'm not going to embarrass you, not you personally, embarrass the council by reading through the nature of the errors on something that has got such statutory funding associated with it. It's appalling.
We believe we have got to the bottom of it in October, which should be the last. So your October drip feed should be the last of the catch-up payments where you have misfunding. So we believe we've gone through and captured it all.
As I say, Andrew, it's not just finance the issue. You're absolutely right. An awful lot of it is around how SEN communicate with finance, and that there seems to be a miscommunication within the council, and then we're not always as schools. And again, I don't want to speak for all schools, but I'm worried about, I'm only talking at the moment about my experience, but my guess is this would be replicated across schools. I'm fortunate, I've got a big finance team, a very large SEN team, and a great deal of experience. If you're in a small school without that sort of expertise, you won't even know you've got a problem, because you're relying on the local authority, and that's not fair.
Anybody else like to make points in relation to this? Yes.
Thanks, Stuart, because from a small school perspective, and I have had a meeting with Andrew this morning, and I understand it doesn't sit with Andrew. So we're a single form entry school. I am fortunate enough to have a full-time business manager, but as very similar to you, she has spent a disproportionate amount of her time going through the nitty-gritty, going back, asking for those individual identified funding. You know, we've got a lot of children who require funding, and you know, it won't be in the same amount as yours, Stuart, but we are owed about, you know, a significant amount of money that is only being paid next month, so we're already out of pocket.
Which is worth noting is that sometimes the errors we've spotted are not in our favour. We're spotting errors where you've given us money we shouldn't have. And so we're being very honest about it, but it's just a terrible position to be in.
Andrew, can you give some reassurances to people?
Like I said, I believe we're in October. We will be catching up, and we believe we're at that point where we have reconciled all the panel minutes back to child to get to where we're at. So we believe we're in that position. And we've checked the minutes. We can only, whether the minutes are correct, we can only go as far as that. But we believe we're in a position where October, you should have all of your funding caught up by October.
These buttons or paying. I've been on Teams for too long. What actions are we going to take forward out of this that the Schools Forum can scrutinise? Is the Director of Children's Services aware of these issues and concerns? By the sound of things, not limited to one school, but are across the local authorities. The same for you, Robin. You're lost.
Yeah.
And you know, this is a significant issue with a significant amount of money that is affecting all of the schools, whether you're academy or maintained, and it's frankly not good enough. Are you aware of your position, Carl?
No, in short, no, I'm not, and therefore I obviously agree with everybody. I think there's some serious concerns here. We need, at the very least, Andrew, I suppose, some clarification on when everything will be resolved and that there won't be any continuation of the problem.
Is every school now getting it's clearly not accurate, but we've got at least a spreadsheet we can scrutinise and say this bit is inaccurate. Has every school now had that, so that their finance teams can do the same sort of due diligence as we've done, so that at least we can try and resolve the position? Because when you say it's going to be ready by October, this is funding that goes back to last December. This is a significant amount of time.
Yep. So
I've been asking for this, as you know, Andrew, so you've had a lot of emails from me and my team, as has Jill, saying we're worried about this.
Yeah, we've already put in place where every team, so we're using SharePoint, and every month we drop in 2 files into each school's area. So we give them, 1, the funding statement that we produce to actually pay schools with, and 2, another spreadsheet that details all of the details of the children in terms of what support we've got, when the meeting was agreed, when the funding's run into, and those details. So we've already put that in place, and that is there for all schools.
How often is that getting updated, Andrew?
It's getting updated once a month.
Okay, that's good.
So it gets updated. We drop that in there, so it will be available for the drip slightly after the drip.
So is it possible for us to ask as an agenda item, not as an action, but as an agenda item, that for SEN or finance or both, actually show the Schools Forum what you're doing, how it's being formatted, and getting some feedback to make sure it's fit for all of our schools, so that we're able to, and then also brief our schools about what they should be looking at, because I don't think Carl will be the only one who won't be aware of it. You know, I'm aware of it because it's such a large amount of our funding comes through SEN, but other smaller schools may not, and it could be to the local authorities' detriment on some occasions, because we've had students leave who you've continued to fund us for example. And then we've had students join us who you've not given us funding for, or you've put in the wrong, whether you've got some students who are being funded in DSP and they're mainstream and vice versa. There's also, I mean, it's a catalogue.
What I'm able to say is, at the next meeting, I will fully document the process that we are currently using for Schools Forum, so you can see exactly are the checks as you would expect from a council's point of view in place, and what the process is from start to finish in terms of when the support for a child is agreed, whether that be an EHCP or other support. All the way.
You've got lots of different avenues to feed in, haven't you?
Yeah, and that's part of why this happened. So document exactly where all the entries are, what the process is to get them through to finance, and then what information you're given as a result of that out the back of it. So you clearly be able to see the process and the checks and balances we've got in place all the way through.
So I want to be helpful, Andrew, because this is always a contentious topic, SEN funding, and the more transparent it is and the more seamless it is, the more you'll get schools on board and the easier everybody's job is.
Yeah. So like I said, we are in the process of recognising there was a mismatch in terms of the skills. So you've seen it at schools in terms of the numbers of children that are in SEN. So what we didn't do was recognise our old systems and processes may not have been able to cope with the complexity of the system that we're now operating within. We've recognised that now, we've made the change, and going forward that a large proportion of this will sit with finance, so you won't have that at the minute. Where do you query? Does that make sense? So actually, who answers your query? Is it a finance issue? Is it an SEN query? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You just issued the payment, you weren't responsible for deciding the value. That came through, as I understood it, from SEN. If that information was inaccurate, you're then issuing the wrong payment. And then, of course, we go back to you and go, you've told us the wrong payment. And you're like, well, I'm only issuing what my SEN team have told me. And that's my point, is it should be joined up across the council. I'm not bothered about who makes the decision your end, as long as it conforms with what we've agreed through either the HCP or the high needs funding process.
It will definitely be improved, and I will include it as a paper next time.
Yes, Lucy.
Just kind of a suggestion, really, and I don't know whether I'm proud to say this or putting myself on the line, but in early years, funding is working in Rutland, right? So we're submitting our funding claims. Expansion of the entitlement has seen that pick up to 80%. That system works. So is there a lesson or a process that we can follow from how you submit your 3 and 4 2-year-old and 9-month funding into this kind of process?
It's slightly different because of the way you submit. So we've got a system that operates largely and manages. So the front end is that nurseries and the early years sector, they input their data. That's then checked from a council issue, and then the system generates a payment off the back. It's a bit more of a manual process at the minute because, as we said a minute ago, in terms of the avenues that the requests come in and the nature of the decisions that are taken. So, for example, an EHCP, you submit an EHCP, it's 12 weeks, 20 weeks before you get a decision. So it's a slightly different process in terms of what that can look like. And obviously, when the EHCP comes forward, the expected, it could be one of 3 funding bands, whereas when you say we've had a child in for 15 hours, the rate is exactly the same. So it's a little bit simpler. We can take lessons learned, and we will, in terms of that's where we want to, is more automation, less manual intervention than what we've had in the past. So that's where we want to get to, because the more automated processes are there, less steps there are for errors to happen. We will make mistakes at the end of the day. I do apologise. I know it's been an issue and I know it's been going on a while, but we do believe we are getting to the bottom of it. We are, like I said, I will be, when we've appointed the resource, it will be a lot clearer in terms of what that looks like, but I will bring a paper to the next meeting that fully documents the process. So, and happy to, please feel like you can actually add into that process, because we're not going to say it's the best process in the world or anything like that. So, looking at it from your side as well would be a useful point from us in terms of how can we improve that process so schools get what they want from it, but also we can have an efficient service from the council as well.
Any other questions for Andrew before we move on? But we're hearing that there are assurances that this will be resolved. Good. The third item, matter arising, was that the chair at the time requested that the information from Kulvinder Bowler regarding children with EHCP and various subgroups of that educated in mainstream schools for comparison with other local authorities should be sent to all schools. Jane.
Thank you, Chair. I can confirm that the information had been sent to all schools via email on the 26th of June.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Back to you, Andrew. The Head of Finance to provide details of the inflationary increases approved by neighbouring local authorities.
A lot of the people in my network have had the benefit of taking early retirement, so my network has changed massively over recent times. So what we've got now is the East Midlands Schools Finance Network have set up a new Teams channel where we now engage in terms of these types of discussions. So it is moving forward. That network, again, because of the changes there were at officer level within Rutland, the other councils, I wasn't able to get the information as readily available as what I was hoping. I have put the request in the Teams channel and things are starting to come back. I've just not had a chance to review them, but I will leave it on there as an open action. And what I'll try and do is get both 24-25 academic year and also for 25-26 academic year what people are planning as well. Okay. So I'll cover to hopefully get both years worth of data.
How soon is that information to be available, Andrew?
It depends how complete you want it to be.
Well, I mean, is the end of next week feasible?
It should be feasible. What I can't do is say how many people are going to respond to me in that time. What I can do is, what I will do, I will put it on a SharePoint site, have a document in there, send a link around, you can drop in and check it yourselves, and I will get that regularly updated in terms of the authority and what information has been given.
Okay. Would it reasonable by the end of next week? Yeah. I
will make sure the document is available and we list it all in there. Whether it's what is completed, like I said, will be largely down to what responses I get. I will make sure it, as and when we get them, we will update that spreadsheet and I'll tag everybody in it so you will know when it has been updated as well.
Okay. Good, thank you. And finally, the Chair requested that pupil place planning data for Year 7 children in September 2025 be distributed to the members. Jill or Jane?
I can confirm that the data was circulated to all members with the minutes from the previous meeting, which was held on the 19th of June.
Thank you very much. Declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest for items on the agenda for this meeting? No. Okay, good. We have already dealt with item 4, so we'll go to item 5. That's to receive a report from Lizzie Papworth about the Learning and Skills, or the Learning and Skills report from Lizzie. Okay.
Thank you, Carl. So you've had a copy of the childcare sufficiency report, so that goes into a lot of detail. I'm just going to summarise a few of the key findings. So the report, this was key findings from spring 2025. So it's looking at availability, affordability, accessibility and the quality of early years and wraparound care. So what we did find from the report is that 82% of early years childcare places are in use, which is a big jump from 68% last year. We are closely monitoring that to make sure each month that we have still got sufficiency across Rutland. 898 children accessed early years provision in January 2025. If we look at the funded early education entitlements, 166 children under 2 years accessed the new working parent entitlement, and 157 2-year-olds accessed the working parent 15-hour offer. So we're getting some good uptake. We have got some work for some capacity challenges, as always, where even though staff remain stable, we do have providers commenting that recruitment difficulties still stay and you're limited to be able to offer those additional places. And baby rooms are at full capacity, near enough full capacity now. So that means higher, staffing ratios and space. And the sector continues to struggle with retention, career progression and pay concerns, but I'll come on to that a bit later. Then we have got the affordability and fees that are lined up in the report. We have got some good response around SEND and inclusion, where 100% of our providers are confident in accessing local inclusion support. So I think that's really important to note that children are accessing money through SENIF, and 74% of those children are accessing their full entitlement. So we know that that inclusion fund supports those children with additional needs. And the inclusive practice training through Dingley's Promise and the Thriving Through Change programme is starting to help support those smooth transitions into school. In terms of wraparound care, we've had Ali Chambers supporting the schools in terms of wraparound care, and there is a wide training offer available. And 48% of parents with preschool children expect to use that wraparound care when their child starts school. Parental feedback is good. They do have said that they would, if it was available, they would like Saturday or weekend provision. So 21% said that they would. They said it's not an urgency, but if it was there, they might use it. The only concerns we've had around that SEND provision in wraparound care. However, we are putting some more support in around that, and we're offering wraparound care staff to attend early years training and the access to the IMP document, which is really helpful, in the speech and language toolkit. We didn't have a lot of business engagement, so we're not getting a lot of responses from businesses to say that childcare is a problem for them and their staff. And then when you look at a summary, we've picked out some key recommendations. So staffing, we will continue to promote the career of early years. And I know that we've already had early years colleagues go into Catmus for the careers event, so they could advertise that career. And I think it was a past pupil that went in to talk to them from your school, who went back into... Yeah, it was really good. Ali Chambers came along as well. Yeah, so Ali's been doing a lot of work to promote that. And I know she's booked in to go into Casterton, and hopefully we can get into UCC and post-16 as well to offer that as well. And we want to work with providers to expand capacity or open new provisions. So we are doing a lot of work around childminders, because we do appreciate that we haven't got childminders in some of those key areas that where it's needed, or more nursery provisions. So we're doing a childminder drop-in and helping to support actually getting more childminders on board so they can see the benefits. SEND access, we're putting in that inclusive support. The data gap, we want to engage with more businesses next time. And the weekend childcare, obviously we can promote to providers to trial that, but it's up to the providers, they're their own businesses, so it's up to them what they want to do in regards to that. So as I said, there's a lot more detail in the report, so if you've got any questions, thank you.
Yes, thank you for the report. Lizzie, any questions from people or thoughts?
Sorry, I forgot. So with the childminder promotion, what we will be doing is sending out some promotion materials to schools. So if you can pass those on to parents to advertise that early years, going into early years, and what a positive experience it is, that would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Craig.
Just a thought really for schools with nurseries. One of the issues we do have is the wraparound care for nursery children because of the ratios. So just something to bear in mind for us. Recruiting staff for nurseries, as you said, is really difficult, and providing that wraparound care is really difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody's, I'm sure, well aware that the recruitment of these people is extremely difficult at the moment. Lucy?
Yeah, thanks ever so much, Lizzie. I did notice, though, during the report, there wasn't a lot of comparison to, like, birth rate data. So while we've talked about where we are as a local authority, it would have been nice to have seen a bit more of the birth rate, so we can do that. You know, like where there's been, you cite a reduction in take-up in preschool places. Is that because it's a reduction in people taking up preschool places, or is it because that particular cohort of children were smaller? Now, if I take my lived experience, that's ours, right? There were physically not as many preschool children in our preschool due to birth rate. So I just wonder if it would have strengthened the report a little bit, because at the minute it makes it sound like less preschool children are taking up place, whereas it's not, it's the cohort was smaller.
Thank you. That's a really good point, and I'll take that into consideration for next time. Thank you.
Tim?
Just a minor point, really. I noticed in the parental responses, I think a big drop in numbers from 24 to 25. You know, it was 106 down to 6. You know, that's enormous. I wonder what that was.
Yeah, so we did discuss that because it was a massive jump, and we think when people have got more to say, they respond, and when they're happier, they seem to not respond. So we're taking it as we're taking it as a positive thing, thinking actually we're engaging really well with the early years sector. They're really happy. So if they had something to say, they would come forward. So we're seeing it as a positive, hopefully. And I think the early years sector would agree that actually there's a lot of support out there and a lot of great work happening.
That's great. Yeah, okay. If we're okay on that one then, yeah, we'll move on to the finance update. So back to you, Andrew.
Thanks, Chair. So again, the overall position on the DSG balances remains challenging. I'm sure I don't have to remind everybody in this room. You know, we set a deficit budget at the council for the first time, which shows the position the council believe us to be in. But even that position has risen. So we set a deficit of 3.8 million. It's now at 4.4 million in-year deficit. So it's a significant deficit that we're currently forecasting. If the position continues, then the overall deficit on the dedicated schools grant would be 10.2 at the end of 526. A massive amount. So there's two recommendations that I've put forward for school forum. Note the position on the dedicated schools grant and agree to continue the 0.5% transfer into the high needs block from the schools block. So I'll take the first one in terms of the financial position for 25-26. As you can see, we currently have deficit position on the high needs block and the early years block as well. The early years block is a little bit difficult because it's based on two census data. One census data in January 25 and one census data in January 26. Obviously, we don't know what the January 26 census data will be, so our funding may be adjusted to reflect an increase in numbers, but we're trying to get data to update what our funding position might be. At the minute, I've shown it not changing from our current position. It's likely to be that spending more money, got more children. Likely to amend, less risk around that area. Obviously, the high needs block is the big area. Exactly where we're at. So at the end of May, we have 405 EHCPs. It's an increase of 40 from the same point in 24-25, and an increase of 19 from the start of 25-26. In addition to this, the council has 89 EHCNAs in progress, and obviously, depending on how many of them go forward, will significantly alter that position. Number of EHCNA. I'll pause there and ask for on the financial. It's fine. Yeah, if you have a question, I'm happy to take it.
The challenge is that for years we've been trying to reduce the funding on SEN, and for years the funding only ever goes the other way, and so it isn't really clearly anything that we can say.
No,
it's a national issue, as we know.
It is a national issue. We're not really sure what the solution is coming.
Well, nobody knows. I've not heard anything from central government. I think they'll shy away from doing anything fundamental to the EHC program. Understandable parental pressure. But I think we'll end up in that.
Yeah, it's almost come down the road. What I can see happen is LGR and then saying, well, it's the council's problem.
What happens to Rutland's debt then? Does that get transferred to Leicestershire?
Or depending on what the proposed model is for LGR, it all would transfer under a new council, but it depends on legislation that comes out around both in terms of.
When do we get a decision on that? So soon then all of the processes that we've talked about here will disappear anyway.
Yeah.
In different counties.
Good. So we're expecting further clarity to come, some form of clarity to come out around the statutory override. I don't know if anybody knows what statutory override. So the statutory override, because we're £10 million in debt, the council have to that at the minute, but on your balance, really technical account. But in effect, there's a statutory override that allow us to put a negative. Not really allowed to do, they've allowed us to do it. What that means is the council, in effect, have a big credit card balance sat on their balance sheet, £10 million in. So what we're expecting is some further clarity around the treatment statutory override to come out around the same time as a local finance sale. But we know government timing a little bit vague at best at the minute in terms of spring. When does spring come? That type of announcements we get at the minute. So again, we expect that to come forward, don't know it. So that might lead us into what's going to happen from a local government organisation point of view, because if they say current councils have to fund the underlying deficit, but the recurring deficit is an issue for the new council to, then we'd know that with the £10 million got to deal with is Rutland. Going forward, it would be, that's me surmising, it won't be that simple, it won't be that clean, because it councils around the country, if that was the case.
I was just going to point out item 12 on the agenda is specifically about this matter, so Jill will no doubt give us some more updates on everything, but on the general position. But can I ask a question, if I may, which is, I heard certainly in the media that the chair of Leicestershire County Council said that 20% of their budget was now devoted to meeting the costs of special educational needs and disabilities. How does Rutland compare with that? Do you know?
So I can't, without saying how they've come up with that number, I really can't comment on it. But what I do know is just servicing the £10 million will cost the council approximately £500,000 each to service the management of that additional cash flow, because we've had to pay it out, had no additional money to deal with that. So just servicing that debt is costing us. Well, look, the council are in a really positive position in the fact that we've got cash balances. So what we're losing out on is interest. So we would normally invest that income and we would get a return on it. We now can't invest that income, so we've lost approximately £500,000 per annum, that is, just from cash flow in there. So, you know, I can't tell you in terms of 20% of our budget, because it depends how you look at it. But certainly in terms of impact to the council, it is significant.
Okay.
Have you got a question?
Andrew, no, it wasn't a question. It was when have we got the information, because we'll be asked to approve the transfer of the 0.5% at some point. You want to carry on first, and then we'll do it at the end?
Yeah, if there isn't any further questions on that bit, I'll move forward. Again, as in previous years, we're looking at transferring 0.5%. In 25-26, it equates to 160k. If funding increased by 3%, it would be 165 loss from the schools block. So the school block transfer would recognise an essential contribution from schools and academies towards helping with the overall cost pressure being faced by the high needs block, supporting all children aged 0 to. If we didn't get it, we would have to review the non-statutory provision that is currently high needs block. And we may also, the council may also consider a Secretary of State application. This application request because of our position. We're almost forced into it by government. It's something that when you do your key tests into have you followed these things, you have to do an application to qualify additional funding. So if we don't do that, it would put additional pressure on the system and have to write. The process for a disapplication, so what the council would have to do is to write to the Secretary of State to say we've taken it to schools for have defined the transfer. So what we would have to do is write to the Secretary of State. We believe the transfer, and it might be more than 0.5%, normally less than half, more than that, so you'll see a lot go through. As a council, we'd have to assess that. And then we would submit that request, and then the Secretary of State then decide whether or not request.
Any other questions about that before we put that to the forum? If not, then proposal is that we transfer 0.5% from the schools block to the high needs block. Those in favour? Against? Abstentions? It's fascinating. Okay, Andrew, did you want to carry on?
This is just a verbal update. So the task and finish group had two main, it was two-pronged. First one was around the funding, the amount we fund and our banding rates on our banding rates and how they compare to the cost of providing. And we've had an initial meeting on that. It's not really moved forward for a few reasons, which I'll comment on the second bit. The second part of it was around looking at those outlier schools with a number of children, SEN, that are outliers. They've got more than, in effect, the average that we've got across the population. We've started a piece of work on the second bit. I was hoping to bring a provisional policy to this meeting. However, I've had sickness and sickness in my team has probably about 6 weeks for development of that. So what I will be bringing that policy to the next discussion. It will go to the task and finish group first to have input into it. It's not really going to be me. I will get that to you as soon as I possibly can. We've focused on that element of the policy first because it may address some of the concerns. Have started to get banding rates from other authorities, and we've started to look at costs, PAs and things like that, and whether or not the funding we provide and the funding the schools should be sufficient. So we have started work on that. It's running slightly behind changes to the policy, but I think the policy will come into action more. As you would expect, we are looking base policy. We are looking at Leicestershire's because they do have a policy around outlier schools. So we are going to be looking at that as a base policy. Doesn't mean it's going to be Leicestershire's policies cut and pasted into here. But with in effect, we've only got 2 academic years before local government reorganisation comes in. So from a school's point of view, in terms of that longer term planning, if we've got a policy that's aligned to Leicestershire, it enables schools to fully understand where they might be going for, rather than if I did a totally different policy that was totally out of kilter with Leicestershire, chances are their schools are going to take precedent. Totally the wrong. They've got a lot more schools that are on the current policy and their current. So that's the update, Rob. If you've got anything else in terms of.
No, I understand your methodology about the policy. I'm just not sure whether it's the right way to go. Just because they've got a policy doesn't mean to say that ours shouldn't be more contextualised to us and based on our numbers.
No, so what I meant is the base of the policy. So for instance, it might have tolerances. It doesn't mean the tolerances will be exactly the same as Leicestershire. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, so if their process is this, we might have the same process, but tolerances might be lower for Rutland. Is what I'm saying. So the process of going through an application for that, or how we apply it, would be the same as whether it's a Leicestershire or a Rutland school. but the tolerances that would be applied might be lower.
And that'll come through the task and finish group anyway.
Okay, you okay to move on then? In that case, it's over to you, Jill, and the Local Inclusion Support Offer.
Yes, this is just a brief update. A lot more will be coming out to schools, but just really to update on where we're moving forwards through from a combination of the previous SEND recovery, the DBV programme and change programme phases 1 and 2. As you're aware, we finished the DBV programme in March, but there's a lot of good work that we consider needs to be carried on and embedded. And as I say, we're now into phase 3 of the change programme, which actually is very much focused on inclusive mainstream approaches. And key within that is the Local Inclusion Support Offer, known as LISO to its friends, which doesn't work for me, but that's officially is what it is. And it is, as it says here, it's about a three-pronged approach really to do with training, advice and direct delivery. It will also be building on the previous work we've done through the School Support Partnership as well. So for Rutland, we're actually quite well prepared for this. But what we are being told from the DFE point of view is that this is a prototype way of working. We're no longer testing and learning, we're now prototyping. And it's indicative of the approach of the school's white paper. So it's helping us to support the DFE in preparing for reforms. So I think it is just worth considering that that seems to be the direction of travel. So we're in a good place to be ahead of the game. So really this was just to really ask for engagement from our schools and from our settings. It's not just a school-based programme, we've made sure of that. And that we really, work together to work out how we can support inclusive mainstream approaches across our education sector and work with that going forwards. So really this, as I said, this is something that we're starting to work on now. As we've said, it's initially from September. At the moment, we're just working in the background, but more will be coming out. It's being led by Andrea, so it's very much encompassed within our current inclusion approaches as well anyway. And it is more than just children with EHCPs. This is actually about children who require additional support, so very much about our service pupils as well as other groups of students as well, our children in care leavers. So we're not just thinking about this directly in the way of SEND, it is more about that wider inclusive approach. So any questions?
Questions for Jill? You don't require any decisions from us.
At this point, no, it is just information at this stage.
Fantastic.
But engagement, please.
Well, thank you for the update on that, Jill. And we now then can move on to Rutland School Sport Partnership. It wasn't clear who was going to lead on this item from the agenda. Is there anybody who will?
It was taken on by Uppingham Community College. Unfortunately, the new head teacher there, David Anderson, has not joined us this afternoon. So I think we should skip that item and move on to the next. Okay. Unless anybody's got anything to say.
I'm slightly perplexed of why it's a schools forum agenda item anyway. I'm honest, I don't think this is the forum to be discussing it.
I think that might be my fault because I asked at the last meeting if we could put it on the agenda.
All of that?
The only reason I did that was because I wanted to keep it honest and make sure the meeting had been held by the October half-term break, and I don't think the meeting has been held by the October half-term break.
We're just in a limbo at the moment, and we have been for at least a year. I still don't know how it ended up with UCC. And UCC aren't here, and it's not moved any further forward. I don't care where it's discussed, frankly, but it needs.
I obviously haven't been in previous meetings, so I don't know what it needs discussing, but I was at the first PE coordinators meeting with Chris Thomas at the beginning of the term, where he detailed the fact that it is now based at UCC and seems to be running, because in my pre-headship I worked at Lyford and was part of that initial Sports Partnership Development as an SSCO programme. It sounds very similar to it was 20 odd years ago. There didn't seem to be, I know there's been some historic things recently that I haven't been part of because I've been in Leicestershire, but it sounds very much like it's gone back to that style of old. Don't know what.
I suggest we hold that item for the next meeting then, and then we can get a proper update from UCC. But thank you.
There's funding that has come in there to fund sport across the county, and we're not actually clear about where the funding is, who's made decisions around it, what funding we're going to have going forward, when are we going to resolve this, how is it going to be resolved. We've been promised meeting after meeting, and this is why Oliver and raising it here, because we were supposed to have meetings outside of this and then they were cancelled. They were diaried on meetings when a lot of the sports representatives weren't able to attend. And it's been rumbling for, as I say, at least 12 months, and there's no clarity.
Oliver?
And at the last meeting, I did push for this to be an agenda item, but I also pushed for a date in the calendar that we heard before the over half-term break. And whilst it's on the agenda, the meeting happened as far as I'm aware.
Well, I mean, I'm not in a position to be updating because I don't know any more than anybody else here, but and I can only suggest that you know, we maybe just contact UCC and ask them for that date. And Andrew?
I'm by no means an expert on this subject. So the council used to apply to Sport England for funding, and it used to come to the council because we were the registered body for the sports provision. We are no longer the registered sport body, so the council no longer receive the funding directly. That's where UCC come in. The funding does go to UCC. Okay, what I'll do, I know it was in Bernadette Caffrey's area, so maybe what we'll
The council originally had the funding and decided, must have made the decision to allow UCC to take on, which is fine, but there's no transparency to it, which is why it is a schools forum. It's about schools' money. And there's now you now have what used to be a council member of staff now working at UCC. I'm not sure of how that funding stream has worked, and they're supposed to be running sport for the county, but certainly not everybody is satisfied by that process, which is why we've asked on a number of occasions for an update, and we've ended up coming to schools forum because we've got nothing from anywhere else.
Anna?
I think Chris Thomas would be the person to get that information from. I'm just looking at my very sketchy notes from that first meeting, and it says UCC are the host of the school games funding, so I think there's been that central government pot that's been put towards Chris Thomas's wage to run those free school games, inclusive, that everybody can join, and then there is still that buy-in option for those extra ones. But there should be somebody who could give clarity to that, I would imagine.
That's what we're going to try and pursue. Yeah.
I'll sort it out.
Okay, thank you, Jane. If we're okay, then we're going to move to the early years working group and an update from Lucy.
Yeah, so it's been a very busy time in the world of early years. We've had the largest expansion to entitlements happen since the last meeting. I think I'm going to adopt Liz's attitude here to no news is good news, right? So I haven't personally heard directly from any other providers in the locality, so I think that's a good thing. I will point out that obviously we have lost one of our key officers, Karen, and actually from a local authority perspective, especially provider to local authority relationship, that is a huge blow. You know, the work that she did was absolutely phenomenal, and the respect that she held across the sector was brilliant. So they are very big shoes to fill, guys. But I think you're right. We've got the Best Start in Life strategy now, something that we've been calling for a long time. So that's really useful. We've actually got a North Star that we can work towards. I think recruitment and retention is a challenge. I think that sits across the country, not just Rutland. I personally just did a huge bit of work for the Department for Education on rurality in local authorities through early years, and it was interesting to talk to local authorities the length and breadth of the country sharing the similar sort of issues. I think we need to be mindful about how we work as a forum to ensure that knowledge and information is disseminated well. I think we need to get out of the I've sent an email kind of thinking and actually think about how we're making sure messages land. What test and measures are we putting in to make sure that, you know, we're not just inbox junkies rather than, you know, because some key information comes from you guys. And I think the best way to engage the sector is to give them a voice and a space and a place to be seen and heard. But it is a very exciting time to be in early years. I think despite us receiving one of the lowest funding rates in the country, it's not your fault, you know, it is a really good time. There's a lot of support for providers out there at the moment. You know, we've got the Do Something Big campaigns, we've got national media promoting working in early years. So, like I said, I'm going for the Lizzie. No news is good news. It's exciting. I will point out, though, something that we need to consider is about thinking differently, I think, in early years. So when we talk about capacity in baby rooms, usually that's a mindset shift. I have to be really careful how I say that, around how we use our capacities, how we utilise our square meterage, and getting out of that whole preschool heavy baby room light thinking that has been the landscape in early years for the last 15, 20 years. So, yeah, that's where we are in early years. All things are good, solid foundations, all help wanted, but happy to take any questions.
Questions from anyone?
I know you didn't mean it like this, Lucy, but I just want to clarify the position on the funding. Rutland as a whole are one of the lowest funded nationally from central government. It is not that Rutland keep a load of funding and don't passport it onto settings. We try and passport as much as. So I know you didn't mean it that way. 100%
agree with that, yeah, because you're only giving us 3%. You're top slicing the 3%, aren't you? Not. So that's really, really good. Some LAs are still taking the 5%. So, yeah, that wasn't a dig at RCC. That was a dig at the wider government for giving us the least.
Sounds good. In that case, then we'll go on to pupil place planning. Jill.
Thank you. Yes, and as we said before, this is on the schools forum agenda item, really, and I'm just thinking what you were saying, Lucy, about the birth date data. This is, you know, helping you to plan. The reason we have this. So I'm just thinking, actually, that could be something that we bring into the pupil place planning agenda. So, because we do normally talk about early years places, but Lizzie's covered that in the childcare sufficiency. Primary school places, whilst there are some schools that are oversubscribed in some year groups, there continues to be good capacity across the county. We'll get a more detailed picture of that when the business intelligence team had the school capacity assessment signed off. It's currently with the DFE for final review, and then it will come back, and I'm hoping it will be ready to present at the December Schools Forum, or the next, is it December, January? January Schools Forum. But so that we'll be able to get some pictures there, which will help certainly in a viewpoint of what the next 5 to 7 years, depending on whether you're primary or secondary, look like in terms of assessing what the capacity looks like. But link back to what you were saying, Lucy, our reception entry figures this year are lower, again, which is reflecting that declining birth rate at the moment. So it is quite difficult in some of the school capacity because you're trying to sort of do an assessment for 7 years of what it's going to look like in reception. So those children haven't even been they're not even a twinkle at that point, but never mind. The pressure on school places in secondary phase continues. At the date when I last spoke to Julie, which was about 10 days ago, year 7 currently full and limited places in years 8 to 10. I can give this data to Jane, But basically, in year 7, we had 4 places too few across the whole of the year 7 cohort. In year 8, we had 9 spare places. In year 9, 8 spare places. In year 10, 8 spare places. And in year 11, 41. But that doesn't really reflect what the true picture is. So across the whole of Rutland secondary schools, there were 62 spare places, which does not allow particularly well for in-year admissions for parents necessarily having their closest school place. But we continue to work with the DFE and feedback to them at our quarterly meetings with the admissions and pupil place planning board.
Do the local authority track anything post-16?
We don't. We do through our September guarantee, so the destination data. We do.
Because the reason I ask is Harrington admissions are becoming unsustainable, and we don't ever get any post-16 data to support any decision making about post-16. You know, Harrington was built for 300 students, and this year we admitted how many are into 192 into year 12, and if we change anything, it would be to disadvantage Rutland children.
I mean, what we can do is when the destination data is published, that we can bring that to schools forum, but that's...
I think it would just be useful in terms of some of the contextual stuff, looking at where Rutland children post-16 end up.
Yeah, more than...
one of the original purposes of Harrington was to keep local children local. And we're at risk at the moment of it becoming a honeypot rather than a local sixth form provider.
I think the destination data should be published in time, and this is me thinking aloud, Jane, but looking at you for the next. So we'll put it as an agenda item for the next meeting, and if it's published before then, I can send it out to the secondary schools anyway.
It'd be really helpful.
Yeah. But I know it's sort of that January time when it comes through. So Lizzie, we can.
Sandra's working on that at the moment,
yes.
So then it will be ready about January time. Yeah, and I can present that information here as well.
Thank you, Lizzie.
Okay, great. Anything else?
All I was going to add was the admissions we had 276 Rutland residents offered requesting a place into reception, and 100% of those got their first choice, which was really good news. And 350 Rutland residents were offered offered their preferred place. We got 94.5% or 94.4% secondary.
When you were talking about the data, I was interested to know how many of Rutland residents didn't get a Rutland school.
All Rutland residents got a Rutland school.
And so when you were talking about school admissions into secondary, you said that the 4 didn't.
No, there was now 4 too few places. So those 4 children got a place.
Say that again, sorry.
So that's the available places in year 7. Now.
Oh,
not,
now.
Yeah, not.
So that we've got 4 places in year 7.
No, there are 4 too few places in year 7.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean?
We're over capacity by 4 places across the year 7s. So some schools will have taken above PAN.
Right, okay.
For this year 7, the current group that are now in.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay. Yeah. But we've still got, for example, a waiting list of I think it's 45 for year 7.
Yeah.
Some of them might be local children. I don't know off the top of my head, but.
Yeah, but they have a place at another school currently.
Okay. Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Okay, got
so
you.
they'll be on a waiting list for you, but they will already be in another school. They're not without a school place.
Okay, that's all I was worried about.
Yeah, no, they're not. They're not. We've got everybody in, so that's the relief, but not necessarily into their first preference. And that was just on Rutland residents. So obviously you'll have more children in your schools because obviously the outer counties, but that was just where we were. And I think that's it.
That's it for now. Right, thank you. Okay. We will go on to the item that we've been discussing quite often through the rest of the agenda, which is the local government reorganisation. So where are we currently, Jill?
Well, we said we'd leave this as We said we'd leave this as a standing agenda item because going forward, the implications that this has for schools form, just as you described, Andrew, we've got to think about that in terms of finance, admissions, pupil placement. You know, it's a wide remit. But at the moment, and I will have to read through this because I haven't, again, Jane, I'll pass it on to you. So, Rutland County Council responded to the statutory invitation by working with Leicestershire's district and borough councils to bring forward the North City South proposal. So that is the proposal for Leicestershire North and Rutland, Leicestershire South and Leicestershire City. So going forward, all 7 Leicestershire district councils and Rutland County Council will consider a final draft of the North City South proposal across a series of meetings prior to the final submission date of the 28th of November. So dates for Rutland's governance meetings have already been added to the council's forward plan, and the full council meeting scheduled for the Thursday the 20th of November.
It's going to cabinet on the. Sorry, yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
It's just going to cabinet on the 14th of October.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it will be on the 20th of November, which will include a debate and indicative non-binding vote on the local government reorganisation draft final proposal, so ensuring all potential options are fully explored before any final decision is reached.
Yes, there are. Multiple proposals have come through across the regions. There's one proposed by Lincolnshire, North Kesteven, South Kesteven, Rutland. Leicestershire Unitary Authority, that's with or without Rutland. Leicester City expansion, potentially absorbing neighbouring districts, which may include us. So at the moment, quite frankly, it's muddying the waters. As Jill has said, the preferred Rutland County Council position is this north-south model, including ourselves, of course, and I'm not sure about whether it ends up in schools. All I can talk is about the areas. It would be 3 unitary authorities, apparently. Yeah. I really don't know how all these other proposals would fit in if we went with North Kesteven, South Kesteven.
Because at the moment we're within Leicestershire for police and for health.
That's exactly. We need to be coterminous with them, so I don't see how it can.
Yeah. That's all I was asking, because of course, although we're all academy, if you think the topics of conversation we've had in this meeting around SEN funding,
quite
around early years, and all of the topics we've discussed, where we end up matters.
Of course, and I think our preferred option with the North, South, and South and Leicester City is by far away the best.
In terms of the services we deal with, alongside the local authority, is health, obviously, and the police.
And social services.
And social services, absolutely.
Very much so.
I mean, my understanding is that the 2 most likely options are either the one that Rutland County Council at the moment saying they support, aren't they, for North and South, Leicestershire and Rutland being with North, and then Leicester City. The question of that expanding is another question in itself, or with or without the expansion of Leicester City, that Leicestershire is a big authority with Rutland, so as one. So that it seems is the options on the table at the moment.
I think they're probably the front runners, yes. I'd agree.
Yeah. Any other questions about that at the moment? Okay.
Sorry?
Well, no, I think the government are intending to make a decision, as I understand it, in 2026. Then I think there was a proposal to have a shadow council system through 26-27 with a view to the new system being fully up and running in 28.
That is correct as far as I understand it, yes.
I just follow these things occasionally, but that's all.
It's on the council's website.
Yeah. but that's what I understand.
I think you're quite right, Chair. We understand that we have to put up, as Jill has said, by the 28th of November, our third proposal, and the government, I'm told, early 2026, tell us what it is.
Who decides?
I'm not sure on that. It will.
Keir Starmer.
Oh yes,
Pretty
it will
much.
be Department of. I think it will be the Ministry of Housing, Communities, and Local Government.
And then I'd say, would staff be 2p'd across, would they? Or
Sorry.
would staff just be 2p'd across in the first instance?
Yeah.
Interesting times. Okay, and we are okay on that one. Good. Finally, we've got the work plan. To review the work plan, so you'll see this on your pack, page 49, it reads on mine, and this is to give us a sense of what, as each meeting happens, should be covered, amongst other things. So we haven't got a great deal for the 15th of January 2026 currently,
We have after this meeting.
but we will have after this meeting, because Jane will update it. But the notional send policy will be due then. Is there any points or comments that people wish to make in relation to that work plan? Nothing that anybody's aware that needs to add. Andrew?
We've also got the standing agenda items for every meeting as well at the top. So it
Ah,
isn't just
yes,
one item.
of course.
There
These
is-
are additional to that. Yeah. Good, good. Are there any items of other business? Oliver?
Just a really quick one. We met about a year ago at Uppingham Community College, and we did like what was working with Schools Forum and what change we thought, and we fed back to this group, and it was a really useful meeting, I thought. One of the agenda items was around an onboarding process for new members to the forum. I just wondered if we'd made any progress along that line.
That was going to be my only other business.
Sure.
Yeah, I was going to say I have started to develop. There were a couple of parts to that. One was developing just a like an induction document that sort of said, "So you're on Schools Forum, what now?" So I've got that. So I was going to send that. I was going to say to Hannah, "Welcome, belated welcome." I was actually going to say though, what I will do is I will send it to Hannah, but I will also put it into the pack for feedback, because obviously as members of Schools Forum, you would be able to say, well, actually, it would be really helpful if as well. So I was going to add that as another agenda, as an area of business. And also, Jane, we were setting up, another task from that was to set up a meeting with council officers, so that for new members, but it will be open to any member of Schools Forum. It doesn't have to be new members. And Jane, I know was... Yes.
I have organised it. I know I've organised it. Look,
It's November sometime.
it is in November due to staff.
And to give the board some time, the members some time to get it in their diaries as well.
Yes, there is a date tentatively arranged for Wednesday the 19th of November, 10 till 12, here in the council chamber. I don't know if the newer members will have that date. I will update the booking and get it sent out to you.
I just wondered, we have a new interim director of children's services in Kevin. Would it appropriately attended and introduced himself? I know him from past history.
Yeah, he wasn't available to attend today. He did send his, but he will be coming to Schools Forum.
But I think it would be good for members to know who the director is and
Yeah.
also get an idea.
No,
of
he did send his apologies today. Sorry, because we messed the start of the meeting up. I did have that message to pass through.
It would be nice if he actually maybe took an agenda item and introduced himself, what his plans are, take questions from the forum about our views about where Rutland is and from a Schools Forum.
Kevin is scheduled to be at that meeting on the 19th
Yeah.
of November. I know it's not a formal Schools Forum, but if if there are people attending, it might be good for him to do the introduction of that session. Exactly like you said, Stuart. Makes sense to me.
If we're all good? Okay, thank you very much, everybody. We'll finish there.
Thank you. Meeting closed at 2:45.
Oh, no. Are you managing to get off early or anything? Or work from home more or anything?
So, I've been in the office. We're interviewing at the minute, so it's hard.
Honestly.
Yeah, so we have loads of